When we imagine the gods of the ancient world, we usually see them as remote, seated upon golden thrones, demanding worship from afar. We often assume that the ancient Sumerians viewed themselves as mere accidents of nature, or, as some modern theories suggest, as biological slaves engineered by extraterrestrial visitors. But the clay tablets of Mesopotamia tell a far more startling story, one that flips our entire understanding of the divine on its head. In the Sumerian worldview, before humans ever drew breath, it was the gods themselves who were the manual laborers. They weren't just the masters of the universe, they were its first construction crew. The single most counterintuitive finding in modern Assyriology is that the rebellion that led to the creation of humanity wasn't a war in heaven, it was a labor strike. To understand who we are, we must look at what the texts actually say. In the Atrahasis Epic, an old Babylonian account dating to roughly 1650 BCE, the story opens with only the gods existing. The universe was divided among the great powers. Anu held the heavens, Enlil held the earth, and Enki held the fresh waters. But the world was unfinished. The text describes a period of 3,600 years, during which the younger gods, the Igigi, were forced to perform backbreaking work. Their task? To dig the beds of the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, they painstakingly excavated the major river systems that would eventually allow life to flourish in the Fertile Crescent. The Atrahasis Epic is explicit about the physical toll this took. It records that the work was too hard and the trouble too much. The younger gods eventually reached a breaking point. They did not plot a coup, they conducted a protest. They set fire to their tools and marched on the gate of Enlil, the counselor of the gods, demanding an end to their toil. This is the moment where popular culture often drifts into the ancient aliens interpretation. Many modern theorists claim these texts describe extraterrestrials who created humans to mine gold for a dying planet. However, when we look at the scholarly translations by experts like W.G. Lambert and Stephanie Daly, the evidence tells a different story. The texts do not mention gold mining as the primary motivator. Instead, they focus on the very thing that made Mesopotamian civilization possible: irrigation and food production. The hard labor was the maintenance of the cosmic infrastructure, the canals and fields required to sustain the gods' own temples. Humans were not conceived as mindless slaves, but as co-laborers. When the younger gods refused to work, the god of wisdom, Enki, proposed a radical solution. He suggested creating a new being that could bear the yoke and take over the physical burdens of the earth. The proposal Enki brought before the divine council was not a simple act of magic. It was a trade, a life for a life. To build a new workforce that could withstand the crushing weight of existence, the gods had to sacrifice one of their own. According to the Atrahasis Epic, the great gods chose a victim, a deity named Ilu. The text specifies that this god was not chosen at random. He was a god who had intelligence or reason. The goddess Nintu, the mother creator, was then instructed to mix the clay of the earth with the blood and flesh of this slaughtered god. This mixture was not merely biological. The texts tell us that because the blood of a god was used, the resulting creature, humanity, would possess a ghost, or what the Mesopotamians called an etemu. This divine spark was intended to ensure that the memory of the labor and the connection to the celestial realm remained intact. The reason of the god Ilu would become the foundation of human wisdom, enabling us to perform the complex, specialized tasks required to maintain a civilization. But why go to such lengths? Why infuse a lowly worker with the essence of a god? The answer lies in the specific purpose the ancient scribes assigned to our species. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, the god Marduk echoes this sentiment, stating that he will create a savage, or Lulu, to bear the toil so the gods themselves can rest. Scholars like Joshua Mark emphasize that in the Mesopotamian worldview, humans were co-laborers with their gods. We were not created for our own sake or for a divine love story. We were created to hold off the forces of chaos and to keep the world running smoothly. Our daily work, maintaining irrigation canals, tilling the parched fields, and offering sacrifices, was viewed as a form of cosmic maintenance. Without us, the gods' earthly residences, their temples, would fall into ruin, and the order of the universe would collapse back into the primordial salt sea of chaos. This theological framework had a very real political function. Scholars note that by framing humanity as servants of the gods, the ruling priesthood and the first kings could justify the use of the entire population for massive state labor projects. If digging a canal was a divine mandate to prevent the gods from returning to backbreaking work, then to refuse that labor was not just a crime, it was a betrayal of the cosmic order. This brings us to the most persistent modern myth surrounding these texts. Popular ancient astronaut theories, famously promoted by Zecharia Sitchin, claim that the Anunnaki were extraterrestrials from a planet called Nibiru, who arrived here to mine gold to save their atmosphere, genetically engineering humans as a slave race to do the heavy lifting. However, when we look at the actual cuneiform tablets, the ones translated and verified by experts like Thorkild Jacobson and Stephanie Daly, this sci-fi narrative vanishes. The texts make no mention of gold mining as a motivation. They do not mention a planet called Nibiru in the context of a home for the gods, nor do they describe genetic engineering in any modern sense. The labor described is consistently and specifically agricultural and civil, digging the riverbeds of the Tigris and Euphrates and building the terrestrial homes of the gods, the ziggurats. The ancient astronaut interpretation takes a complex theological allegory about social order and forces it into a modern scientific mold that the ancients never intended. But the story of humanity's creation does not end with a peaceful arrangement. The Atrahasis Epic builds progressively toward a darker conclusion. As humanity fulfilled its role and multiplied, it became too many and too loud. The text tells us that the noise of mankind became so great that it deprived the god Enlil of sleep. This noise, which many scholars interpret as a metaphor for social unrest, overpopulation, or the inherent chaos humans bring to a structured world, led the gods to regret their creation. The solution was not a change in the labor contract, but a total reset of the biological clock. The gods decided to send a cataclysm to silence the noise forever. But one god, the wise Enki, who had designed us in the house of destiny, could not let his creation perish so easily. Next time, we journey into the heart of the storm. We will look at the original blueprints for the Great Boat, a vessel described 1,000 years before the Ark of the Bible, and meet the man who was warned by a reed wall that the waters were coming. Join us for The Deluge on Anunnaki Uncovered.